it has been for the Golden State Warriors. Franchise record after franchise record, beating teams up along the way. 45 W's by double figures. And the man who is solely responsible for putting this all together,
Steph Curry,
is the general manager and executive of the year in the NBA, Bob Meyers. Bob, along with Rick Fox, Steve Smith, I'm Jared Greenberg. First and foremost, most importantly here, as we've discussed with this wind, a few months ago, Vince Cellini on the beat dubbed that you have the best hair of any executive in the league. I'm glad he just limited it to executives, not broadcasters. But I would say it is standing up pretty well.
It's pretty good, yeah. It's the one advantage that I might have. That's it. But Jerry West always tells me it's going to go gray and it's going to go away at some point. So in this job, the stress.
Well, I can speak to the gray.
Bob, you grew up here.
Yeah.
How special for you, not just because you helped put this team together, but to see this community of Oakland and San Francisco come together?
It's pretty special. I don't get to enjoy it as much in this position. You'd think I would, but I might have enjoyed it more being a fan of growing up in this community. And it's been such a loyal fan base for so long, and the fans have persevered more than anyone else, especially the longtime fans, the 20, 30-year fans. And then there's people in our organization that have been through 17-win seasons, 19-win seasons. So I think it is fulfilling to see a community rewarded for their loyalty. We've got, I think, the greatest fans in the NBA, and they're authentic, they're passionate, they're genuine. So for them, I think it's special. But for me, in the position I'm in, because you're so close to it, it's hard to actually enjoy as much as I wish I did. I'm trying to, but it's a little bit tougher.
Bob, the question I have, obviously the team had some success last year, and so I look at the little moves, because you have a team that has success, you want to bring in the right guys. I thought the Sean Livingston, Barbosa, those two guys fit extremely well because of one, when you look at Sean Livingston, a 6'7" point guard that him and Steph could play off each other, they can play together. Just talk about those two guys you brought in Barbosa and Sean Livingston.
Well, thanks, Stephen. First, Sean, you know, it's in the NBA, with the way the salary cap works, you do have to dedicate most of your money to your starters. And that's okay. That's usually how it is. So we felt like if we're going to spend our mid-level on a player, we had to have a player that could play multiple positions, because Steph Curry was going to play 36, 38 minutes a night. We couldn't spend $5 million on a player in a backup point guard position, only playing 10, 12 minutes a night. So our philosophy is when you sign a bench player, have him be a multiple position player. And that's what we liked in Sean. He could play the 1, 2, and even 3. And Steph, what he's able to do is play the point guard and play off the ball. And so we actually signed and traded for Andre Iguodala for the same reason, to play 1, 2, 3 for us. And so that was the main impetus for going after Sean, is a guy that can handle the ball, defend, switch in the pick and roll, things like that. And then as far as Leandro, Steve had always liked him. He had him in Phoenix. And he even blew me away, not just the off-the-court stuff, but on the court. Off the court, his energy. I don't know if you know him at all, but he's just a great guy, good energy about him. And he's waited. He's been patient. When his turn has come, he's played very well for us.
Bob, we were looking at the building the empire there just a second, and it is becoming. I mean, it's a youthful team with a lot of potential moving forward. You mentioned a lot of your salary usually goes to your starters. David Lee, Iguodala, two very successful individuals who make a lot of money right now. What was that conversation like between you and Steve, and also between the players, if it rose beyond Steve, when they were moved to the bench? And you bring in a Draymond Green and a Harrison Barton, young players, talented, it's been successful, but they don't make that type of money.
Well, you know what? You and Steve could probably answer that better than I could, because I didn't play in the NBA, but I imagine there's a pride and there's an ego, and that's okay. That's why players are successful. They believe in themselves. Starting in the NBA is an honor, and when you're a veteran and you've earned that right, both those players have been all-stars, that's not an easy thing to accept. And that's not a knock on either of those two guys if they had rebuffed Steve, but one of Steve's best attributes is his ability to communicate. So he built some equity with those players prior to making those decisions, so he was able to communicate to them, you know what, guys, this is the best thing for the team. And if you know Steve at all, there's nothing about him that's more important than winning. He's not self-promoting. He's not playing favorites. He's not saying you make more money than this guy, or I like you a little bit more because we joke around after practice. It's all an even playing field with him. And so every player, and you guys have probably played for coaches that were that way and maybe some that weren't, but players can appreciate that. And they can't then criticize when they say all the coach wants to do is win. And then having some early success enabled Steve to continue on that path. But for Andre and David to accept those roles, it's a good question. It's a good point, because that's not always the case in the NBA.
Did you feel you needed to follow up in communication?
Yeah, I mean, I did in the event that something wasn't right. But as I stood back, it's kind of like when you're in the general manager spot, you have to be careful as to where your role is, what is your role. And so you're actually 100 yards away watching body language, watching interviews, watching those players discuss their roles, their new roles, and trying to see, is there any issue here that we need to address? And thankfully, both of those players said the right things, did the right things. It wasn't as if they were saying the right things to the media and then off to the side saying something else. And so it made it easier. It made it easier for everybody to accept. And then us getting off to the start that we did, it's very hard for any individual to be unhappy when your team is achieving the success it was.
Bob, I had a question, one about on the court and off the court, one of your players who I don't think gets enough credit, because I'm looking at him as a young guy, Rick Fox, in this league. And I wouldn't say taking a backseat, but like what you said, because of what you guys have built here, is all about winning. Harrison Barnes could be a number 2 option, maybe a number 1 option somewhere else, but just being around him a little bit, the type of person he is off the court, but then also I think looking at what he can do versatility-wise, I talked about it earlier. Steve asked him to guard Zach Randolph in that series. That's tough for a guy that small to go out there in front of him. It just seems like he's one of those high-character guys, along with being a talented guy that fits in. Yeah, he went to that school.
Yeah.
That school, Bob.
Couldn't help himself.
Couldn't help himself, could he, Bob? Just talk about him other than the Tar Heel part.
Yeah, right. We don't need to talk about that. You know what? It's hard. When you build a team, you want talent, and that sometimes actually can make you look a little bit past character. It's hard to sometimes forego talent, and you always sit in the GM chair. You say, well, that guy's a great player, but maybe not a great guy, and you get seduced by that. So what we try to do is find the talent and along with the character, because character means winning is the most important thing. You guys both played, and I imagine and you were on some really good teams. There's teams where you were scoring 25 points a night, but you weren't winning. And then there's teams maybe where you were scoring 18, but you were. So getting a player to understand what is the most important thing, and thankfully for Harrison, who just turned 23, he was able to embrace that at an early age, understanding that he plays with 2 of the best shooters in the league who probably should take 20 shots a game. On another team, Harrison might be the guy taking 20 shots a game, but once you take a step back from that and say, I'm actually now in my 3rd year, starting on a team that won 67 games and playing in the NBA Finals, for him to say, I'm not maybe getting 5 shots that I'd like to get, and understanding the big picture, that's really a testament to who he is. And it goes along with what Rick asked about the character of David and Andre. Everybody has to sacrifice on a championship caliber team or a team that's playing in the finals. It doesn't always mean you're going to get as many shots as you might like, or even points.
Bob Meyers is the general manager of the Golden State Warriors. We are here on our media availability show. Bob, the big news yesterday, Klay Thompson cleared, ready to play tomorrow night in Game 1. But that didn't come without some public criticism, and especially yesterday from the executive director of the Players Association, Michelle Roberts, evaluating and wanting to reevaluate how your organization handled not only Klay Thompson but Steph Curry as well when he had his head injury. What was your response to all of that that's come out?
Well, I will tell you this, Jared. These 2 guys especially, how many doctor's offices have you been in? Even me, when I was an agent, I spent a lot of time, and no doctor. Medicine is an art as much as science. So when you go into the doctor, I'm sure these guys, one guy says, well, your knees hurt, you're out for 3 weeks. The next guy goes, you can play tomorrow night. And what you realize is there's, with medicine, with your body, there's no perfect answer. It does not exist. So all you can do as an organization is follow the protocol. And especially with the concussion issue, if the protocol changes, teams will follow the new protocol. But as it stands, the difficult thing with concussion specifically is symptoms can develop later. And so the hard part is asking yourself, both players passed the concussion evaluations, then you have to take a step back and say, well, they passed their evaluations, now what do you do? And nobody has that answer. So the question becomes, the better question is, after that transpires, because clearly if you don't pass a concussion evaluation, you're done. You don't play. Simple. If you do, then what do you do knowing that concussions can develop later? So you could take a very conservative approach and say, well, that was a pretty good knock to the head. You're clear, you passed it, but we're not going to play you. And then the player's looking at you, and these guys, what are you talking about? I want to play. And so you say, well, sorry, we watched the replay maybe, and it didn't look good. So it's a very gray area, but if the rules change and they're better protecting the players, we're all for that. Nobody in the organization, or I think any organization, is trying to hurt their players, but it's an inexact science. And so you get great doctors. I believe we have great doctors, and then you take their advice.
Bob, one last question from me. The 15 losses, what happened?
I have a question for you. I lived in LA when you played for those great Laker teams.
Yeah.
The league is a little bit different now, right? It's just different with the spacing and the shooting. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, whether we'll win or whether we won't win. I always ask people, and I'll ask you, how would we have done against those teams that you played on? It was a different game. So if we were playing one of your Lakers teams with Shaq and Kobe, what do you think of? I'm curious, and I'm really genuinely curious about that.
I'll give you a quick, short answer. It probably starts with Shaq from the standpoint of just the presence he would demand. Bogut, I love. I think Festus Ezeli would be a huge presence then in that series,
right.
Having to be spring size. I don't think you could go small and put Draymond on him. But at the end of the day, the tempo with which you guys play with, we'd have to try and control that and take you out of that. Physically, I think we were bigger.
Yeah.
We were bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
But the game is different now.
Yeah.
It really is different. And what I love about your team is that you play both ends of the floor. You defend.
Right.
You defend. And when I see that, I have to respect that would be a series.
Yeah.
It'd be a series.
And I think, Bob, the new zone rules totally
Different.
changed the way you play. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about trying to guard these big Shaqs and monsters in a post where you couldn't come across the line.
Right.
Totally be different. You couldn't sit in Shaq's lap.
Right.
It makes it totally different. Then you would have to be bigger.
Do you have some sort of pictures on Rick Fox? Because that's the first time he's been humble about his Laker teams and not said we would sweep whoever.
No, if he said that, I would accept it. I mean, that was a pretty good team, so I'm not going to disagree.
They were just okay.
I'm
They were
just
okay.
curious. I mean, the league has. It's to be interesting. The question is, it is a different game.
It's a different game.
And what will it be in 10 years? Right? It's going to be different than this,
Right.
for sure, because it's different than it was 10 years ago.
I think
that's what's exciting.
Bob, me and Rick could play 4 now. And
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
even thought of
Yeah.
playing the power
Right.
forward spot. Only on occasions, maybe a play or two.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to see who would guard Steph Curry, who would try and slow him down.
Well, they have big guards.
Yeah.
I mean, they're big teams. So,
Brown Harper,
yeah.
Kobe Bryant.
Bob,
those
you've got
guys
some
are there.
other responsibilities today, so
Sure.
unfortunately we'd love to keep you, but we've got to let you go. The former UCLA Bruin, congratulations on all the success and best of luck in the
Thanks,
NBA
Jared.
Finals.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations,
Thanks,
Bob.
guys. Thanks for having me on.
The executive of the year in the NBA, Bob Meyers. We're coming back with Rick Fox and Steve Smith when we'll hear from all the players.